Well, if US presidential debates are about informing voters about policy and showing a watching world how democracy works, then what we saw last night was a failure. For 90 minutes, the pressure America is under was laid bare. MSNBC called it a dark event. CNN called it a hot mess inside a dumpster fire inside a train wreck. And the interruptions and insults cast a shadow over proceedings, so much so that the commission which organises them now says it's going to bring in new measures to ensure a more orderly discussion of the issues in the next two debates. Well, in the coming minutes, we're going to work through the key moments and the fallout from an infamous night, starting with President Trump passing up the chance to condemn white supremacists.
Do you want to call them? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
supremacists and
white like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys. Stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left.
So the president passed up the chance to address white supremacy. He did, though, tell a far-right group, the Proud Boys, to stand by. Well, now he's sought to clarify this. He says he's always denounced white supremacists. That's not true. And here's what he said about the Proud Boys.
I don't know who the Proud Boys are. I mean, you'll have to give me a definition because I really don't know who they are. I can only say they have to stand down, let law enforcement do their work.
But to be clear, he didn't address white supremacy when asked to during the debate and did refer to the Proud Boys. Now, earlier, the Senate Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, was asked about the president's handling of this issue in the debate. He said the president condemns white supremacists in the strongest possible way. Well, have a listen to Washington Post columnist Brian Klaas, who sees it differently.
It's not that he just didn't condemn it. It's that he gave an instruction to this group as though he was their leader. He said stand by as though he's waiting for further instructions if there is election-related violence. So I think the tensions and the polarization around the election are so great and President Trump's language so explosive that I'm very worried about violence around the November elections.
Joe Biden was asked about these concerns today. Here's what he said.
If, in fact, we win this election, this president will step down. With a lot of bravado. He has no alternative. The American people would not stand for it. No agency would stand for that happening. My message to the Proud Boys and every other white supremacist group is cease and desist. That's not who we are. This is not who we are as Americans.
Well, if you don't know of the Proud Boys, this is a group that was founded in 2016. It's far-right, anti-immigrant and all-male. It has a strict membership protocol. In order to join, members have to declare that they are a Western chauvinist who refuses to apologise for creating the modern world. They've become notorious for violent confrontations. They've frequently faced off against opposition groups. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and YouTube have all banned the Proud Boys. Facebook says it considers it a hate organisation, but we know it does still continue to use private social media channels like Telegram and Parler. And there are a number of reports in US media that members of the Proud Boys were celebrating the president's refusal to condemn them. The other group referenced in that section of the debate was Antifa. That's short for anti-fascist. It's not a coherent group, more a loose affiliation of mostly far-left activists. And some Antifa activists have a track record of using violence to make their point. They've been prominent during Black Lives Matter protests and have frequently clashed with opposition groups and with police. To be clear, Proud Boys and Antifa are relatively small, perhaps a few thousand active supporters at most, some think even less than that, but their willingness to use violence on occasions means they get a disproportionate amount of attention. So remarkably, one issue was the president refusing to condemn white supremacy. The next issue is how moderator Chris Wallace struggled to contain Donald Trump's continual interruptions. Here's one of many examples.
We're moving on.
He didn't take them.
Well,
Vice President,
no. Can I be honest? It's a very important
Try to be
question.
honest.
He stood up.
No,
the
answer to the question is no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion, if you
that
get rid
is
of
absolutely
you know what, you're,
not true.
You're doing it.
You're going to
Not
have
true.
Gentlemen. I hate to raise my voice, but it seems to be. Why should I be different than the two of you? The country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more interrupting than he has.
That's all right, but he does plenty.
Well, less than, sir, less than
plenty.
No, less than you have. Let's please continue on.
And there was plenty more of that. It was always going to be difficult. One columnist for the New York magazine tweeted, "People are hating on Chris Wallace, but I think there was no way to moderate this debate effectively." Anne Applebaum of The Atlantic argues this was intentional. She says the point of Trump's performance in that debate was to undermine confidence in the election and in democracy itself. Mr. Trump himself has responded, saying Chris had a tough night. 2-on-1 was not surprising but fun, he says. Two things to note about Chris Wallace. He's a registered Democrat, but he also works for Fox News, a network that's consistently supportive of the president. And as I mentioned earlier, the commission which runs these debates says the rules now need to be changed. In a statement, it says last night's debate made clear that additional structure should be added to the format of the remaining debates to ensure a more orderly discussion of the issues. Well, let's get further analysis from the BBC's Barbara Plett-Usher in Washington, D.C.
After the debate last night, commentators who frankly looked visibly shocked said, let's stop here. Why would we want to have another one of these? What's the point of that? And now you have this commission statement saying, yes, more structure is needed for orderly discussion. We are considering new tools, and we'll let you know what they are shortly. Now, there have been calls for things like the moderator being able to cut the mic or to end the debate early if it gets out of hand. And bear in mind, Roz, that the next debate is going to be a different format. It's going to be a town hall format in which ordinary people ask questions. So that might be a format that's less likely to be dominated by Mr. Trump in this way, because he did seem to be very calculated about his barrage of insults and interruptions and so on. It did seem to be a tactic of disruption, which even his own people said was too hot. Now, Mr. Biden himself has said that he's going to continue with these debates no matter what. And in fact, he made quite a lot of money for his campaign during last night's debate. So that's at least an incentive to keep going. But you do wonder how many more people are going to keep on tuning in if the commission doesn't come up with something that can actually bring order to this and make it a debate rather than a sort of fiasco.
And Barbara, I'm losing count of the number of commentators who are either writing articles or going on TV or tweeting that this is now a crisis in American democracy, what we saw last night, what we've seen more generally. You've been covering American politics for a long while. Do you think that's overstating it?
Well, I mean, President Trump has been chipping away at the norms and institutions of democracy for the past 4 years, but I would say that has escalated in recent months in the sense that he's begun to actively cast doubt on the democratic process itself. So he has said that mail-in voting will lead to massive fraud when there's no evidence that that's the case. He has not committed himself to accepting the results of the election if he thinks that there is fraud. He's not even committed to a peaceful transition of power, which is really bedrock stuff for democracy. So I think the trajectory is alarming. Is democracy right now in crisis here? I would say at the very least, the foundations of democracy in the U.S. are being tested.
And just quickly, Barbara, how are we looking in the polls at the moment? Mr. Biden's still up, I assume.
Yeah, there haven't been a lot of numbers since the debate itself, but he has had a very stable lead over President Trump for quite a while, in the single digits, between 6 and 10%. And also he has leads in a number of swing states as well. The feeling going into the debate was that Mr. Trump was on the defensive. He would need to shift attention away from himself towards Mr. Biden and his presumed weaknesses. Now, that didn't happen, as we've seen. It was very much center stage on his disruptive tactics. So some analysts are saying there was no winner, therefore Joe Biden is the winner because he's out in front.
Now, this is one of these moments when the world watches American democracy, and it's fair to say a lot of people were unimpressed. In Germany, Der Spiegel said the debate was a TV duel like a car accident. The state-run Chinese newspaper, the Global Times, called it the most chaotic presidential debate ever. The Italian newspaper, La Repubblica, declared that American politics had never sunk so low and that it was chaotic, rowdy and based on mutual contempt. Or you could read the Times here in the UK describing it as not a debate in any meaningful sense, but rather an ill-tempered and at times incomprehensible squabble between two angry septuagenarians who palpably loathe each other. And the BBC's Nick Bryant's one of our correspondents in America. He put it this way: when historians assess the self-inflicted harm America did its international reputation in the early 21st century, the Florida debacle will be on the list. That's the 2000 election. Guantanamo, Abu Ghraib, and this first presidential debate. Watch the world over. Incalculable soft power damage, says Nick. Well, President Trump's former National Security Advisor, General H.R. McMaster, has spoken to BBC World News today and picks up on some of those themes, saying these deep divisions on show are harming America.
We're acting like we're our own worst enemies. And so it's as you allude to, the Russia in particular is trying to drag us down. They're trying to polarize all of our societies, pit us against each other, really amplify these narrow identities in a way that reduces our confidence in who we are as a people and in our democratic principles and institutions and processes. So all of our leaders, especially those who were on stage last night, they have to be a heck of a lot more responsible, because I don't think they even recognize the damage they're doing and how easy they're making it for our determined adversaries.